On December 17th, 2013, Heather Elvis, born June 30th, 1993, of Carolina Forest, South Carolina, went out for a first date with a man that ended when he dropped her off at her apartment at 1:15 a.m. Half an hour later, she called her roommate, who was visiting with her family, to tell her how the date had gone, although there are records of her cell phone being used over the next 2 hours. She has not been seen or heard from since that morning. Elvis, a native of Horry County, graduated in 2011 from St James High School in Murrells Inlet. Her parents allowed her, as their oldest daughter, to move out of their own apartment shortly afterwards in California Forest, which she shared with a roommate from out of state. She worked as a waitress at the Tilted Kilt in Myrtle Beach, the House of Blues in North Myrtle Beach, while studying cosmetology. In June 2013, Elvis took notice of Sydney Moorer, a 38-year-old married resident of Socastee, who repaired the kitchen equipment at one of the restaurants. She tweeted early that month that she had a taste for men who were older. Her roommate, Bree Warrelman, also a co-worker at the time, recalled that Elvis pointed him out to her at work. Almost a month later, she expressed sexual interest in the guy who builds things at my job. A July 12th tweet responding to a friend who told Elvis she had a lot of explaining to do, named Sydney as someone she'll go out of her way to see. 4 hours afterward, she follows up with, "Baby did a bad thing," and "I'm in way too deep, but watch me get in deeper." Friends and co-workers recalled that Elvis also discussed the relationship she was having with them as well. Moorer would often come to the restaurants when he was not working to deliver coffee and bagels to her. Moorer considered asking her to work as his children's nanny should he and his wife move to Florida, as they were considering doing. Moorer said his affair with Elvis was primarily confined to September. Late that month, Elvis tweeted that once upon a time, an angel and a devil fell in love. It did not end well, which has since been interpreted as referring to the relationship by then ended. Shortly afterwards, Moorer's wife Tammy found out about the affair, which made her very angry. Warrelman said Tammy made Sydney call Elvis and end the affair with her listening. Sydney says, "Told Elvis that she was nothing to me, just someone who spread her legs." Warrelman said Sydney basically tore Heather apart as a human being and made her feel horrible about herself. Tammy later told a friend that her husband and Elvis had confined their relations to oral sex. Also sent the younger woman texts and pictures of herself and Sydney having sex. To make sure her husband remained faithful to her, Tammy handcuffed him to the couple's bed every night. He said later, changed his phone password to only one she knew, only giving it to him and accompanying him whenever he went anywhere outside the house. He agreed to all these restrictions in order to save their marriage. She also made him get their name tattooed above his crotch. However, Tammy continued to contact Elvis, texting her, "Hey sweetie, ready to meet the missus?" and threatening her physically, or implying that she was going to kill her husband. On November 1st, Elvis texted back and said, "No one you need to worry about anymore." A text that, by the way, Dad no longer has his phone, presumably referring to Sydney, drew a period in response from Heather, her only other direct response to the many messages she was receiving from Tammy. Tammy also tried to get Elvis fired from her job at the Tilted Kilt, calling the restaurant regularly and telling them her husband would stop repairing their equipment as long as Elvis continued working there. At one point, Sydney reportedly managed to begin texting Elvis again, telling her that his wife had not objected to the affair itself, since she had also had a lover, but to his lying about it. She asked him when he would have his phone back, and he said the relationship was over. She agreed, but said she wanted Tammy to stop calling the Tilted Kilt. "I lost hours today because they sent me home after she kept calling," she wrote at one point. However, on November 5th, when Elvis last saw Sydney, she retweeted a joke by comedian Daniel Tosh that seemed to be indirectly referencing the affair. "Hey married fellas, you can either cheat on your wife or murder her, never both. That's when you get caught." That appeared to be the end of communications between Elvis and the Moorers. The couple and their 2 children left South Carolina to drive to Disneyland for a vacation on November 19th. They returned on December 11th. At the time of the Moorers' return, Heather according to her friends and family, was recovering from the affair. She'd gotten a job at a beauty parlour in downtown Myrtle Beach, started just before Christmas, which she was eagerly anticipating, and resolved, along with Waterman, to begin attending church regularly. However, she had put on weight, and co-workers at the Tilted Kilt noted that her uniforms had gone up 3 bra sizes. Elvis was concerned she'd become pregnant, possibly by Sydney. Her manager at the Tilted Kilt said she had taken one pregnancy test, which came back as error. On the night of December 17th, she went on a first date with another man, Stephen Schiraldi, starting at 10 p.m. He drove her around in his car, looking at residential Christmas lights in the area. They later drove to the parking lot of the Inlet Square Mall, where he taught her how to drive his manual transmission vehicle. Elvis sent photos of herself using the stick to her father and Waterman. Schiraldi dropped Elvis off at Carolina Forest apartment around 1:15 a.m. He's the last person known to have seen her. 20 minutes later, a call was placed from a payphone to Elvis's payphone. It lasted 5 minutes. Shortly afterwards, Elvis called Waterman, who was then out of state visiting her family for the holidays. Elvis said that Sydney had called, telling her he was planning to leave his wife and asking her to meet him. Waterman, who described her roommate as hysterical during the conversation, counselled her not to do so. After 2 minutes, the call was ended. Elvis's whereabouts have not been conclusively established beyond 1:45 a.m. on December 18th. On the evening of December 19th, Elvis's green 2001 Dodge Intrepid was found, parked perpendicular to the spaces it was in, at the Peachtree Landing boat launch along the Wakamal River in Socastee, about 8 miles from her apartment. It was locked, and when opened, her phone, keys and purse were not inside. Calls to her phone went unanswered, and she was not at her apartment nor her job. Horry County Police began a missing persons investigation. Schiraldi, the last person known to have seen Elvis, was quickly cleared. The day after the car was found, a search of the area around the boat landing found no sign of Elvis. Later searches of the riverbed down to Winya Bay by a team of rescue divers from Coastal Carolina University were likewise fruitless. A set of bones discovered in another area nearby around New Year's Day were later found to belong to a male. Investigators were able to obtain Elvis's phone records, which showed considerable activity on the preceding morning, over the 2 hours after she had told Waterman that Sydney had called her, although they cannot say whether Elvis was the one using it. Ping showed that at 2:30 a.m. a call had been made from the phone to the payphone that had made the call Heather said came from Sydney, but no one answered. Shortly afterwards, it was taken to Longbeard's Bar and Grill elsewhere in Carolina Forest, where it remained for 15 minutes. After the phone left, it was taken as far away as Augusta Plantation Drive, whereupon it was returned to Longbeard's for another 15 minutes. At the end of that time period, a call to Sydney's cell phone was placed from it, but it was not answered. The phone appeared to be in motion, suggesting it had left Longbeard's. Within 5 minutes, it was back at Elvis's apartment and remained there for another 5 minutes. During that time, it called Sydney's phone again, then located at his home, resulting in a 4-minute conversation. At 3:37 a.m, about 8 minutes after that call ended, the phone is taken to Peachtree Landing. A minute later, 3 attempts are made to call Sydney's phone from it within the space of 2 minutes. All are unanswered. At 3:41, another attempt was made. A minute and a half later, data records for Elvis's phone end. Its location could not only be identified as somewhere in the Wakamal National Wildlife Refuge, Tammy and Sydney's phone records were also examined. There had been no communication between the two via those phones from November 2nd, the day Sydney would later testify he surrendered his phone to Tammy as a condition of remaining married, until 4:37 a.m, December 18, when she sent him a text asking for the pot stickers and orange juice. Yes, ma'am, he replied immediately afterwards. Police found video evidence further linking Sydney Moorer with Elvis's activities in the early hours of December 18th. Security cameras at the Myrtle Beach Walmart showed that at 1:12 a.m. that night he entered the store. 7 minutes later, he bought cigars and a pregnancy test, and then he left. Footage from a Kangaroo gas station on Joe White Avenue showed Sydney making the call from the payphone across the street to Elvis's cell phone at 1:35 a.m. Investigators also reviewed footage from private security cameras along 3 miles between the Moorers house and the Peachtree Landing. 2, one at home, midway along the route, and another closer to the landing, showed a dark Ford F-150 pickup truck passing in the direction of the landing at 3:36 and 3:39 a.m. At 3:45 and 3:46, the vehicle returns going the opposite direction. Its license plate is not visible. However, after an analysis and enhancement of the video by both South Carolina Highway Patrol's Accident Investigation Unit and the FBI, it was determined to be Sydney's and searched. The first 2 arrests related to the case were not the Moorers or anyone else suspected of involvement in Elvis's disappearance. On January 28, 2014, William Christopher Barrett and Gareth Ryan Starnes were arrested and charged with obstruction of justice. Police said both had posted information on social media about the case that was either false or misleading, and that investigators had wasted time being diverted from the case when they looked into it. Both were released after posting bond. The charge against Starnes was dismissed in April when the charging officer missed the preliminary hearing because he mistakenly believed the case had been continued. Starnes was indicted on a charge on July 31st. Twice during February, Sidney Moorer told police that people had fired at him or brandished weapons while he was driving on local roads with his family due to publicity over his possible role in the disappearance. In the former incident, Georgetown County deputy sheriffs who responded saw no signs that his truck had been hit, despite Sidney's claim that he had heard shells strike it. He claimed later that in addition to those incidents, he had been followed and received threats against himself and his home, and the family's pets had been killed and mutilated. Later, Sidney posted signs outside the family home lamenting the threats and the impact they had on his children, whom some of them, he said, had been directed at by name. On February 21st, police closed off a section of South Carolina Highway 814 next to the Moorer house to execute a search warrant for the property. After 11 hours in which law enforcement searched thoroughly, the Moorers were both arrested at home and charged with murder, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and 2 counts each of indecent exposure. The latter charge resulted from sexually exploited images found on their phones that were determined to have taken themselves in public places. The obstruction charges against Sidney were later specified as resulting from his early denial of his use of a payphone, a claim he reportedly retracted only when confronted with the security camera footage from the gas station showing him making the call. At a news conference announcing the arrests, police did not go into detail about what evidence supported the murder and kidnapping charges. The Moorers posted a $20,000 bond set for those 2 charges, but later waived the bond on the kidnapping charges in favour of the murder charges, on which they were initially held without bond. A month after the arrest, the court imposed a gag order on all participants in the case. Investigators also announced that they would later be making additional charges unrelated to the Elvis case that instead involved financial discrepancies filed with the state of South Carolina on behalf of the occupants of a residence. In June, these charges were formally filed as related to Medicaid fraud. Investigators said in a 2007 application for benefits that exceeded £10,000, the Moorers had failed to disclose the income from their businesses. In the wake of the arrests, the Moorers drew heavy support on social media. Tammy and Sidney had disparaged Elvis as a stalker beforehand on various sites, particularly their Facebook pages, suggesting the police had framed them and were protecting the real killers. The Elvis family tried to fight back, but felt overwhelmed. At one point, they barred a local newspaper which had repeated in its coverage some of the allegations made against them from a news conference they held discussing the online harassment. In early 2015, the couple were released from jail, where they had been held for the preceding 11 months, after a judge accepted Tammy's mother's house as collateral sufficient to guarantee the $100,000 bond on the murder charges. At the bond hearing, prosecutors told the court they still had no direct evidence linking the couple to Elvis's disappearance. The Elvis family argued against the release, claiming they had received threats from the Moura family and their supporters, so the court required Sydney and Tammy to agree to GPS monitoring of their whereabouts, to stay 5 miles away from the Elvis family home at all times, and to avoid interacting with any of them on Facebook or any other social media. Due to the continuing threats against Sydney and Tammy and their difficulties finding work in Horry County, in September the court allowed the Mouras to move to Florida, where Sydney had found a job, where the case was still pending. They were required to continue to meet their bail conditions and waive extradition from Florida should they violate them. In March 2016, prosecutors dropped the murder charges against both Sydney and Tammy without prejudice, meaning they could be reinstated later should the state decide to. The indecent exposure charges were dropped as well, along with the obstruction charge against Tammy. The charges related to the alleged Medicaid fraud also remained. The Elvises said that while they were disappointed, they understood that prosecutors had to make decisions like that and hoped further investigations and trials on the outstanding charges would eventually lead to them finding out what had happened to Heather.